We're grateful for challenges. We seek your wisdom and your guidance and your patience as we deal with the challenges that face our state. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. This is a meeting of the Senate Higher Education Committee. We have 3 items on our agenda. We have a presentation first of the Partnership of Inclusive Innovation by the Lieutenant Governor's Office. They had asked to go first because of a rescheduling conflict. Are they here? Okay, good deal.
All right.
If you would like to present from the podium.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to give a presentation of the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation. I'll, like I noted, have this very brief presentation to provide an overview of what the partnership.
Hang on just a second. You have at your desk a packet that has to do with this presentation. So,
Do you have this? Okay.
Does everybody have it? Okay. Good deal. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. So thank you. So you should have the copy of the slides of this presentation, and obviously we're happy to send electronic copies as well afterwards. But I'm here my name is Deborah Lamb, and I run the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation. I'm here to give you a brief overview of what the partnership has done in its first year, but also look forward to further discussion and questions on how we could support you further, and obviously think more about innovation for the whole state of Georgia. So without further ado, this started almost 2 years ago based on the task force that the Lieutenant Governor put together, which was to provide recommendations on how to position Georgia as the technology capital of the East Coast. And very quickly it became something larger because we thought that actually inclusive innovation was about bringing increased access and opportunities for all Georgians to innovate, but that innovation wasn't an end state, but a way to drive economic and community development throughout the state. There was much that we can celebrate in terms of different sectors and geographies and people around innovation, but the innovation has been largely concentrated, and we need to think more about statewide innovation, and we wanted to think beyond what we saw in past models of a Silicon Valley or a Boston corridor, which was a very narrow interpretation of innovation, and think that if we were more inclusive from the outset and think more statewide, we can be stronger in terms of its outcome, especially for sustainability. So we actually put together the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation, which was ultimately the entity that would implement the recommendations set forth by the task force, and today is a driving force of all this. A little bit about our structure. This is our Board of Advisors. We are a statewide public-private partnership that's made up of C-suite, civic, corporate, and statewide leadership, and that's really what makes this an important component. The public-private partnership structure, obviously, we get support from the state, but mostly from the private sector through multi-year donations. Its backbone is Georgia Tech, which provides a lot of the administration, financial, HR, and then, of course, we get a lot of pro bono support through management consultancy, legal, and brand. What this means is that most of the investments is actually geared externally to benefit the state. We also have Georgia members that's made up of the 9 very amazing statewide organizations, from higher ed to, of course, corporate, and of course statewide technology and agriculture. And that really makes the structure of the partnership really unique, because one, of our definition of inclusive innovation, really thinking about increasing access and opportunities. 2, it's statewide focus versus 1 geography. And then 3, it's public-private partnership, which really cements it in terms of its structure. But beyond the structure, what do we actually do? So we've been able to really focus on impact around 3 main pillars: economic opportunity, community research, and student engagement. And just briefly on those pillars, to us, on economic opportunity, we've seen a lot of good investment and attention and support given to startups, especially on capital. But to us, startups aren't the only Georgia entities that innovate. So we really think that you could be a nonprofit, a school, a local government, a community group, and if you have a proven program, service, or technology that's ready to scale, then we're interested in investing. And so that's where we've really broadened the opportunity for a lot more Georgian entities to capture innovation opportunities beyond the traditional startup space. The second one is around student engagement, and definitely something that we share, which is really taking students from any year in college, any major, and any university in Georgia, and pair them up for full-time funded summer fellowships where it's a combination of experiential learning and public service. So we believe that you can learn about smart cities and civic tech and innovation in the classroom, or you can be on the forefront doing it as part of the community and really gaining leadership and expertise that way. And so to date, our Smart Community Core for this upcoming summer, we're expected to have 16 sites across the state, and over 130 students have already applied from 15 universities. So it's going to be a really exciting project. This has been funded by Gulfstream and Microsoft, actually, to pursue. So really externally funded to support students in competitive fellowships. The final one, pillar that we have is around community research. And how we define community research is that it's based from the problem first. So what is the problem or the priority that the community has, whether it's transportation or energy or housing, and most communities don't necessarily have R&D units. So what we do is bring the university to the community, and we couple that with multidisciplinary applied research that the community will have access to in terms of critical R&D, but actually for the research it gets better as well because they actually get to implement the research and get feedback from the community in terms of co-creation. So what we find is that the community research partnerships are so successful that they actually end up getting additional funding because of the initial success of that project or that research. So those have been our our 3 pillars, and I just want to share a little bit about how we've been able to deliver impact on our first year. Like I said, this has been a 1-year project, and we have a lot more to do, and that's why we wanted to come share this with you and hopefully get more insight on what we can do going further. But already we've had about 140 technologies that have been deployed across the state. We have 19 projects. 10 of the 12 economic development regions have been impacted. You will have postcards that probably on your desk that you can kind of see the maps that we've been able to do. But even beyond the performance metrics, I really like Professor Alexander's quote here, which is about the qualitative impact. Beyond just the pure numbers, we've been able to encapsulate all the things that have been talked about and wrestled with over the past decade has been really pushed forward in this one community example. And that's really what the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation is. We know that there's a lot of people and organizations working in this space, but we hope to complement the efforts and leverage it for a stronger ecosystem. And so we really are thinking about the larger network and where we can play a role through innovation and technology going forward. 2 examples I want to show you specifically just to create more of a sense of our projects. In coastal Georgia, we have 9 projects and have worked with a number of different local actors, from nonprofits to local governments and of course industry. One such project is the Smart Sea Level Sensor project that you may see. It's actually a project that we've had for a few years now, but in year 1 it started with 33 sensors that have been installed along the coast and now has almost doubled. And this tracks sea level rise so the community can better address hurricanes and flooding. Those sensors have actually been gathering data in an open source platform, which then feeds into analytics for the emergency planning and response team. It's also actually been part of some curriculum for a high school STEAM class where they've been able to put the sea level sensor together. So there's really some good education value in terms of this project. The other thing I want to note is that we've had a project last summer that involved the Savannah College of Art and Design along with Georgia Tech, working together with the city of Savannah on neighborhood redesign and development. And in total, we've had almost 1,000 hours devoted from students working in coastal Georgia. Another quick project to note is what we've been able to do in southeast Georgia in Valdosta. This is a project that we've had with the city of Valdosta and Valdosta State University with Georgia Tech, working together to essentially replace all 128 traffic signals to first responders and preemption units. This means that in a case of emergency, we've been able to decrease 10 to 11 seconds for fire trucks to go through. So all 10 fire trucks have been outfitted with preemption units. 72 firefighters have been trained, and over 900 community members have been involved in this project. The city of Valdosta actually has garnered 2 additional major awards because of this project. The mayor of Valdosta went to Barcelona to collect the finalists for the World Smart Mobility Award, and they're actually going to Columbus in October or April for the National Smart 50 Award. So really good about celebrating Valdosta and positioning Valdosta through this work. But also for this group, this project has actually enhanced the education curriculum in Valdosta State University through 2 engineering courses. So they're better prepared for some of these real-world projects that the students will have to go through in the future. So what we want to emphasize, though, is even if you're not a member of one of our projects, we really are starting to build a stronger ecosystem around Georgia and innovation. So we have monthly newsletters, webinars that really focus on certain topics and think about the different actors and sectors and expertise that's involved, and that's really starting to move forward on sharing best practices, knowledge sharing, and building up a stronger ecosystem for Georgia innovation. This is the map I was telling you about. This kind of shows you all the different projects that we have throughout the state. You should have a postcard that also says that. And let me just end with this one short video.
We believe diversity is our strength, and that geographic location, gender, race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status should never be insurmountable obstacles to success. For Georgia to emerge as the innovation and tech capital of the East Coast, we must connect through our differences, apply sustainable thinking, and rely on our uniquely Georgian spirit and grit. Autonomous vehicles that increase safety and efficiency, farming co-ops that give employees autonomy and a tangible stake in their work, smart water sensors that help prevent flooding. These are just a few of the ideas that the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation supports. Ideas generated in communities and individuals from all over Georgia with all kinds of backgrounds. With the goal of innovation, opportunity, and greater economic success, we identify and help those across Georgia who don't necessarily identify as stereotypical entrepreneurs, the dreamers and doers who have inspirational and actionable ideas. Today, we work across 3 main programs.
The pilot program awards innovators of all kinds, financial and networking support to create new services and products that will help build a stronger Georgia.
The Georgia Smart Communities Challenge supports research projects that address local issues through technology and data to create a safer and sustainable future for all citizens.
And the Smart Community Core program helps university and graduate students pursue their passion for community service with summer placements that provide hands-on engagement.
We believe great innovations and new businesses can originate from anywhere and everywhere, but that the opportunity to innovate has not been shared equally. By expanding access to opportunity, we leverage resources across business, research universities, and government to advance innovation for a better Georgia tomorrow, to become the innovation and tech capital of the East Coast and beyond. The Partnership for Inclusive Innovation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. I appreciate the presentation. Do we have any questions from the committee? What number are you?
I'll do 9, yeah, right. Thanks so much. This is a little bit deeper dive. I've been aware of the effort, but this is an overview that helps get our arms around it. What's the budget? And I know you have some great in-kind support from the private sector as well as associations, but talk to us about how you take the resources, where they come from, and how you deploy them on an annual basis.
Yeah, so we think of the budget in a few ways. So obviously we are grateful for the state's contribution of this, and that's been a really important aspect of this.
Right.
But we've been able to match most of it with corporate as well. And then what's really great is that Georgia Tech has provided a basis in terms of, finance, HR, all the backbone in terms of space. So that definitely is an important aspect. And like I said, we have pro bono consultancy with some key partners like Brand Culture and Kirkpatrick Townsend and Jackson Spalding, et cetera, that provide a lot more marketing support and branding support, et cetera. So that makes it a lot easier in terms of our budget because of that pooled source. So from the financial side, that means we're able to give most of the money. We're expected to distribute $2.88 million externally.
Did you say that again?
$2.88 million externally this year, financial year. So that's really great. But what we've seen is that the projects that we've invested in have already recouped that investment. And a really good example is the Work and Farm Fund. So we gave the Work and Farm Fund, and for those that don't know, the Work and Farm Fund is a project led by the Conservation Fund, which is a life cycle model of how you should do farming. So they take farmland that is at risk for development and purchase it for farm management, and then provide capital and training for next generation farmers. And then those farmers have guaranteed contracts from Emory University and others to purchase those produce. So it really goes everything from farm management to next generation farmers, training and capital, to farm to table kind of access to the local community. This was the first model that was undertaken in the country, and it's been so successful. They currently have 6 farms under their portfolio, and they actually have Illinois is now going to copy this model, as well as Texas. So it started in Georgia as the first of its kind model, and then has now been replicated in Illinois and Texas. And for the Work and Farm Fund, with our $250,000 investment, that Work and Farm Fund has been able to generate over $1 million from that investment that we've been able to provide. So I can count each and every one of these projects where there's additional benefit financially, as well as qualitatively in terms of the subject matter, people, and community that goes beyond the singular budget number, if you will.
That's a great and exciting example. As we work to address rural Georgia and opportunities that can be built out. That's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jim.
Dude, very quickly, we've got 2 bills, and I think Rose is waiting on our room.
Oh, I didn't know that, Ms.
I'm sorry. No problem.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Lamb. I appreciate you making the presentation.
Stay in touch, yeah.
First bill we have before us today is Senate Bill 333 coming back.
Very
We have some revisions. We have Senator Albers and Mr. Kirk Shook with us. And Senator, Chairman, if you would present the bill and discuss the changes that were made in the bill, please, sir. And if you would, the changes or anything, if you would reference a line item.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank you personally for your help in us perfecting this bill. Everyone should have a copy of the actual changes that were made. It's a 1-page document. I'm not going to go over what we did the first time, but again, this is making sure that we are having the organization that Mr. Shook leads just focus on those that are actually giving degrees and certificates away, not those that are doing tutoring, so that all stays the same. There were questions last time about bonding. We've changed that, and it's now discretionary for either paying indirectly or if the board believes it's necessary to have them get a bond, they'll get a bond, but also to ensure that bond is a B+ or higher, which I think was a great addition from the chairman. We also want to make sure that there's a process in place for reinstatement should there be any issue. Obviously, the goal of this fund and this process is to make sure we're protecting the students who could be harmed if something else happens similar to the Argosy debacle that happened many years ago. There are a couple of minor changes that I'm going to ask you all to make in concert with what you and I talked about, Mr. Chairman, specifically. I'm going to direct you to lines 543.
This is on the sub.
This is on the sub, yeah. You should be looking at LC 490904S. But specifically, beginning on lines 543, you're going to see reference multiple times, both on 543, 553, and 559, the number $500,000. Well, that was original to many decades ago. And after some discussion, we're going to raise that to $10 million. And then on line 550, the initial fund balance, which was at $475,000, we're going to raise that to $4 million, so it covers kind of where the fund is today. But the target will be now to increase the fund over time. And then there'll be one more change, which is on line 633. This is in reference to not using more than 10% of the fund balance at any one given time based on one circumstance. After some discussion, Chairman Tippins and I and Director Shook agreed that, you know what, there could be a circumstance that would happen. So we put in the original language that it would be by unanimous vote. However, I'm going to ask that we change that to a 2/3 majority, similar to the way we typically do rules here in the legislature. So those would be the changes that I would ask you to make. But the spirit of the bill is still in there. This is actually less but more prescriptive and more responsible government.
Do we have any questions? I have one, Mr. Chairman, if I could. Did you address line 553 at $500,000? Would that stay the same?
No, that
Or
would go to $10 million.
$10 million as
Yep.
well as the 544?
Yeah, so
Both of those?
there's actually three references that you'll see on lines 543, 553, and 559. Each area where it says 500,000, we're going to raise that to 10 million.
And also on 544.
Oh, and 544, I'm sorry. And then,
You were going to amend the committee sub.
correct, that's right. And then on line 550, we'll amend the 475,000 to $4 million, because that's where the fund
Okay.
is a little over that today.
Any questions? I will entertain a motion that the sub be amended as presented.
Also move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of amending the substitute as has been described, raise your hand. Okay. Is there any discussion of the bill as the substitute as amended? Any questions? I'll entertain a motion to accept the substitute as amended, and we're working off of LC 490904S.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry for the delay. Thank
All
you,
good,
Mr.
thank you. It's a
Shrub.
better bill.
Thank you.
It's amazing what a good chair can do with a bill, isn't it?
He really did. It's that much better. It's that much better.
Okay, the second bill we have before us today is Senate Bill 239 with Senator Harrell.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator Harrell,
Chairman.
we have a sub on this in our
Yes.
packets. If you will, address your bill and the sub, please, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committees.
How's
committee.
the volume? Can everybody hear in the back?
Talk louder, Sal.
What's the LC number?
The LC on the committee sub is LC 490884S. And we are working from the substitute to Senate Bill 239. Senate Bill 239 we brought before this committee last year, and it generated a lot of discussion, which was very healthy. Then it generated a study committee that the chairman and I served on, as well as a few other members, over the interim, and we really went in depth on the whole fees issue, and ended up, I'm pleased to say that a couple of our recommendations that came from the study committee have been put forth by the governor's office. One of those was to remove the special institutional fee. Now, the special institutional fee was the biggest fee of all at most of the schools. It ranged from about $200 to about $550
Per semester.
per semester. That's right. So it was very pricey, and it was a fee that was put in place after the Great Recession, when there was a drop in revenue. It was a very necessary fee to, basically save the schools, but it was supposed to be temporary. And when we really delved into, what are all these fees? What are they for? How much are they? This one really stood out, and we were like, well, why is it still there? Because we're well past the recession. But we also noticed at the same time that the amount of money the state was putting into the university system, of course, dropped with the Great Recession, which is why the fee was there. And it has come back up some, but not probably nearly as much as it should have. So the second thing the governor's office has proposed to do is to put back in to the tune of $230 million what it would cost to remove the special institutional fee, which is just absolutely fantastic, and we're thrilled. But still, the issue that remains is the issue that I brought forth originally, is that for part-time students who take longer than 4 years to complete a degree, oftentimes taking 8 years if they take 2 classes at a time, which is not all that uncommon because they're working, that they end up, if they pay 100% of the fees every time, by the time they finish their degree after 8 years, they've probably paid $8,000 to $10,000 more for their degree than people who can afford to not work and do it full time. So what this bill before us does is kind of sets a base standard for how to prorate those fees, so that we don't overcharge our part-time students, who then often times have to take out loans, and then that $8,000 to $10,000 grows even more if it's part of a loan package, and it can be thousands of dollars more than that. So what I wanted to do in this bill substitute is keep it very, very simple. So instead of, like we thought we would do at first, prorating it by every credit hour, and then we came up with a kind of schedule where we prorated every 3 credit hours, I decided we'd just make a cutoff point. And that cutoff point would be 7 hours. So if, classes are 3 hours, okay? So if you make it 7 hours, you're covering all the people who take 2 classes a semester. So why did I set it at 7? Well, sometimes you have a 1-hour lab. And it would be really bad if you set it at 6 and then somebody took a lab for 1 hour and it jumped it up to 100% fees. That would be really bad. So I set it at 7. So if you look at the bill, it's easiest to look at this bill backwards, actually. Notice it's very short. That was on purpose. So if you look at the last paragraph in the bill, this is like the heart of the bill. And it basically says that part-time students shall be charged no more than 50% of the total amount of mandatory student fees if registered for 7 credit hours. So 7 hours and below, you're charged 50%. 8 hours and above, you're charged 100%. That's like the heart of the bill. And that's simple. Then if you go up, there's one exception. And that's because of our concern about fees that are tied to debt. Fees that are the public-private ventures that are funding like parking garages or things like that. The universities need that money to pay down that debt. So there's an exception to the 50%, and that's fees that are tied to debt. Those can be charged at 100%. And then going further up, starting on line 17, we're going to make sure the Board of Regents discloses to the students which fees are tied to debts, so that when they see their report and they're like, well, wait a minute, I'm paying 100% for this fee. Why, if I'm only supposed to be charged 50%? Those fees that are tied to debt need to be disclosed to the student, and that's what that's about. And then finally, at the beginning of the bill, we're making what are called mandatory fees 50% for 7 hours or less, because mandatory fees are defined in the Board of Regents handbook, and they're a set of, 8 to 10 fees that are mandatory for all the universities to charge. And so we're referring to their definition of what a mandatory fee is. And so that's basically the bill. This topic, if you start discussing this topic on social media, man, does it go out there. This is something that our families in our districts are very concerned about. There was a Facebook post just a couple nights ago where somebody posted an old college tuition bill from when some of us went to school, like in the 1980s, compared to one that's current. And of course, the amount of tuition was, so different. It was like $800 then, and now it's, more like $6,000. So that was amazing. But they also started talking about the fees, and how many fees there are and how much they cost. And one person said he was surprised there wasn't a fee management fee. I thought that was kind of funny. But this is something your constituents are concerned about. So I bring this solution to you after about a year's worth of work. And I think it's a simple solution that people can understand. And I believe that good policy should always be simple.
So I have a
Questions?
question.
Point out that he went to school before the 80s.
I was on the faculty.
Anybody have a question?
My tuition was $175.
Senator Hitt.
Let him go first.
Yeah, I appreciate the senator's desire to control fees, and I think we share that.
Senator, if you would, speak into the microphone.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman.
Can you enlighten me on to what fees would be a part of the subparagraph 1 on line 21, and what would be parts of the subparagraph 2 on line 23? Now, it's just enumerate the fees that would be mandatory because they have to pay debt versus fees that would be reduced based on credit hours.
Be careful when you do use the term mandatory, though, because that's a whole different set of fees. But they would have to pay 100% of the fees tied to debt.
As you say, mandatory student fees assessed to pay debt service on capital projects.
Would you like to come describe those fees, the PPV fees, what some of those are used for?
I think I know. I just want them enumerated. I want on the record, right?
Absolutely. So it would be, some examples would be parking decks, health centers, recreation centers that are built on the campuses.
Right. And fees that would be reduced fee options
Would
would be subject to reduced fees, 50% at 7 or fewer hours.
So it would be, examples, athletic, potentially transportation, as long as it wasn't attached to a debt service.
Technology?
Technology, it depends. I think we still need to have some
my
conversations
point is,
around
how
that.
would we know which ones are there, and how would you define them?
I think we need more time to be able to go through that and work with our board and understand the ultimate impact on our institutions. The reality is, regardless if you're part-time, full-time, online, there's always going to be technology needs that we have to fund as an institution.
And my experience is that students want parking when they get there.
If they come on campus.
If they
yes,
come
sir.
on campus, if they're not online. That's true. Just an observation on line 20 and 26, you note the word quarter.
Yeah.
Is that the current quarter?
No, that's legislative council always puts that in because
So that doesn't relate to an academic term. It relates to a.
What? Yeah. If
My question is, does quarter relate to an academic term, or does it relate to a financial term?
I thought it related to if you had some schools that were on quarters rather than semesters.
There are no students on quarter systems in the university
Well, then I don't know
system.
why they put that in there. They always do, though. We'd have to ask legislative
I believe
council
we're currently
that.
on a semester system and have been for a while. So it's just that, should it be semester or should it be quarter? That's the question.
Semester.
Semester. I'd offer a friendly suggestion that we adjust the wording.
Yeah, I would be happy to ask legislative council that. I think I did once and got an answer and it didn't come back out.
Maybe they were on the
It's
quarter
like
system like
maybe
I was.
in case we went back to the
decades
quarter
ago.
system
I
or
don't
something
know.
like that.
Again, I applaud and appreciate the senator's desire to control fees. I am concerned about making sure we understand which fees we're talking about and how we would effectively define them.
And that would refer back to the Board of Regents policy manual.
Which is that 914,
Yes. The policy manual is very clear about which fees are under mandatory, correct? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hickman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Senator Harrell. I got a couple observations and some questions too. I always like to know, being an accountant, I can be pretty precise on things. So I wonder why 7 versus 4, or 7 versus 3, or 7 versus whatever it is. That sounds like that's just a number you could, for lack of a better word, pulled out of the air. And sometimes I do that too. I don't mean that disrespectful. I'm just saying that sounds kind of strange. The other thing is, and I've looked at the tuition of all the schools, and some of the schools have got lower tuition because of, like Georgia Southern University. Georgia Southern University has a high first-generation college student, very, very high, and a lot of those people, can't pay a lot of money. So our tuition is pretty low compared to a lot of other schools. So I'd be concerned about how tuition is going to be impacted if we do away with these fees.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing I'd like to make an observation is, I understand that if through the whole university system we've got decline in enrollment. Some 20 out of 26 or 27 got decline in enrollment. So I think Senator Burns was leading to this. I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but I'd like to see y'all study this more and move it a little bit further, make some more decisions on it, come back with a suggested plan rather than what we vote on today.
We're not voting today, this is a hearing. I do have some numbers, and since you like numbers, you might like these. So I have from the year 2021, let me back up. Most of the schools, when I surveyed them, prorate fees for part-time students who are going 5 hours or fewer. Now remember, 2 classes. There's logic in these numbers I chose.
Okay.
I didn't grab them out of the air. Most universities prorate their fees for their students who are going 5 hours or fewer. Okay, I kept seeing that over and over again because universities decide this individually. Right. And I kept seeing that over and over again, that many, many campuses, 5 hours or fewer, pay 50%. Well, 1 class is 3 hours, 2 classes is 6 hours. So I wasn't sure why they cut it off at 5 hours. So I said, well, maybe it should be 6 hours so people who take 2 classes are 50%. And that would have been fine. But then I think oftentimes kids have to take labs that are 1 hour. And if you have somebody taking 6 hours who's paying 50%, but then they have to take that 1 lab for 1 credit hour, and it pushes them up, they have to pay 100% of the fees. So I said, let's make it at 7. Now, how many kids is that? 17,000 in 2021, academic year. 17,000 students took 6 hours, okay? 7,000 students took 7 hours. So that's a total of 24,000 students that we're helping. That's out of 272,000. Okay, so a little less than 10% that this bill helps. Targeted, in a very targeted way, helps those 24,000 students. That's undergraduate. Graduate, we had 18,000 students take 6 hours. Only 1,000 students take 7 hours. So that's a total of 19,000 graduate students whom we would be helping out of 68,000.
How much?
That's it.
If I may, I'd like to ask Interim Chancellor Teresa McCartney,
Who served on our study committee.
and let me just say this. I could not have asked for any more cooperation from Chancellor McCartney or from her staff in sorting through the issue about the special institution fees that resulted in a great outcome this year. And I think when you start talking about addressing an issue, you need to go to the primary sources. Clearly, you're talking about a certain amount of money, and it's currently in our budget. And it's like just dipping water out. You don't leave a hole there. The hole's going to be filled somehow. Given the success that we had last year, I'd like to take and build on this. I don't know that we need a study committee to do this, but I think, Senator, if you could, and as long as I'm in the Senate, I'll be glad to try to work with you in trying to come to an understanding of what's doable. And I know we had a conversation this morning, and there's a lot of facets to this, many facets, that we're not going to solve between now and Wednesday morning whenever we ring in, when we've got to have a report out of committee. So I think just from a timing standpoint, I don't think we can get a workable bill that addresses this. But I'd like to, in the off season, I think we can look at this and meet and have conversations, and that way draw on what the reality of the university side is. I mean, truth of the matter is, we have very little control over Board of Regents just because of the constitutional structure, and we can pass all the bills we want to. And it's kind of like saber rattling. But if we can get to a solution, I'd rather get to a solution that's workable than try to mandate something in the bill that's not enforceable. So from that standpoint, I'd like for us to work on it during the summer.
Absolutely, and I would love just to take an opportunity to, again, thank you as chairman of this committee, and then also Senator Harold, that I thought we had great conversations in the fall. To me, it's more than just part-time students. We're also looking at online students. We're looking at course fees, and my concern is we can't take a piecemeal approach to this, and that even what I said in the fall and working with you, Senator, we have to be very strategic of how we do this, because the reality is, and Senator Hickman, you hit it on the nail, of we have declining enrollment in our institutions, and we have to ensure, and I hate to say it this bluntly, but we have to ensure that we can keep the doors open to our institutions. So any reductions that we do financially has to be strategic. It has to be strategic in even how we potentially tackle it as a phased approach, because some of these items we may not be able to do in one fell swoop in one fiscal year. So I really do need flexibility to ensure that we do this the right thing, because what I don't want to happen is to create a quality issue on our institutions long term. But we are committed, and I've said from the very beginning, we are committed, because there's a number of things that we do know that we need to clean up.
Thank you.
Senator Rhett, you number 11?
10. I'm a 10.
That's what I hear.
That's what you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to commend y'all on the work you're doing, because from my experience, they'll collect these fees and they'll go up on the fees, and before you know it, you're underwater and you're paying for fees and wondering, are they relevant? Just like when I was in college, they had a hair club group, and that left myself and the senator from the 21st out, wondering why are we paying that fee, but keep up the good work.
Okay, this concludes our business for the day. We may very well have a call meeting between now and our Tuesday meeting. I'll keep you brief. We have a couple of bills that we're looking at and waiting to get some more information back on about maybe some unintended consequences that may be therein. I know the Rules Committee is waiting on this room. We kind of got double scheduled at 3:30, so we stand adjourned. Thank you so much for your participation.